we're taking a historic step forward to protect and unify our country, to build up Canada's economy by tearing down internal trade barriers.
Canada is getting stronger, working more closely together, doing more business with themselves, and New Brunswick is really excited about the opportunity to do more business with Ontario.
Welcome back to Question Period. Donald Trump's global trade war is threatening Canada's economic security. In response, there's a push among political leaders in this country to boost trade and labor mobility between provinces and territories. Ontario signed memorandums of understanding this week with Nova Scotia and New Brunswick aimed at doing just that. New Brunswick is one of, if not the province most vulnerable to U.S. tariffs. More than 90% of what New Brunswick exports goes south of the border. The Premier of that province, Susan Holt, is with us live now. Hi, Premier. Good to see you. Happy Easter. Thanks for making some time today for the conversation.
Happy Easter to you too, Vashi.
I wondered if you could help quantify or qualify for Canadians who are watching if, in fact, the trade barriers that you've agreed to remove with Ontario are expanded even beyond the relationship between your two provinces, how much of an economic impact that will have? Like, how big of a difference will that be for Canadians? How much cheaper is the stuff that they're going to buy?
Oh, that's a great way to frame it, because we have some data about the impact to GDP that breaking down internal trade barriers will have. I wish I had it at the price point level to say, now when you have access to a great New Brunswick craft beer in Ontario, or we get access to your Ontario wines, it's going to come at this price point, which is less than you'd pay for it now. So looking forward to being able to quantify those savings for Canadians as we break down these trade barriers across the country.
So at the top line level, then, even at the, from a perspective of growing the Canadian economy, or even the provincial one in New Brunswick, what can you tell people watching about the salient difference breaking down those barriers would have?
Yeah, imagine that you're trying to send a product between provinces right now, and you have to put a different label on it for that other province, and then you have to get a secondary inspection for it to go to that other province, and then you have to put it on a truck that needs to change drivers at the border and put a different flag on the back of their truck. All of that adds cost to the price of the product and cost to the business in terms of trying to operate and grow. And so by breaking down these trade barriers between New Brunswick and Ontario and other provinces, that means that we can not spend money on secondary inspections and repetitive labeling, and instead put those monies back into wages, into investing in new product development, and into lowering prices.
You talked, Premier, about with Ontario and other provinces that the announcement this week was between, New Brunswick and Ontario, Nova Scotia and Ontario, not between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Quebec, for example, wasn't there, and you got to go through Quebec in order to get to Ontario with that truck that you referenced from New Brunswick. Where do things stand with the other premiers? Why weren't they all there at that announcement too?
Well, we're trying to move as fast as we can and go as far as we can. And so Ontario and Nova Scotia and New Brunswick were ready to move. We are having conversations with other provinces. We've proposed here in Atlantic Canada to do an Atlantic Canadian free trade zone so that we can all recognize each other's goods and services without needing any of that extra stuff that I just talked about. We're certainly in conversations with Quebec. That's New Brunswick's largest trading partner and our physical neighbor as we try to move goods from New Brunswick to anywhere else going out toward the west. Love to see the same kind of agreement that we signed with Ontario get rapidly worked out with the other provinces. We're having those conversations right now.
And what can you tell Canadians about, I guess, how those conversations are going? Because I kind of ask against, I get that we're in a new time, a unique period where we're facing a very unique threat. But I have covered, and not to say you were there because you just became Premier not too long ago, but I have covered so many First Ministers' conferences in which one of the parts of the communique was a pledge to do exactly what you're saying you want to do now. And it never manifested. It never came to fruition. How close are premiers to coming to an agreement? How close, are Canadians to being able to benefit from what you described should happen?
Yeah, I think your questions are well-founded, Vashi, because these barriers have been in place for decades, and there has been a lot of lip service paid to removing internal trade barriers. I worked on this probably about 10 years ago from a different perspective when I was with Chambers of Commerce. And was slow because it felt like line by line work. I have never seen more momentum to break down trade barriers. Provinces that are willing to just wipe off party specific exceptions with a stroke of a pen, like we did in New Brunswick, legislation getting tabled to recognize credentials from anyone in Canada, certainly here in New Brunswick. And so I think we're going to be able to go a lot further than we have gone in a long time. And the federal government's at the table pushing hard for a July 1st deadline. So some of us maybe are impatient and we want to move and strike while the iron's hot. So that's what New Brunswick's doing with a couple other partners that want to move quickly. But I'm optimistic that we will we already have, I guess, make meaningful progress in getting rid of trade barriers between provinces so that we can cut down that cost of red tape and reap the benefit in Canada to help protect and strengthen our economy at a time when we really need it.
I just have a few seconds left. I just want to drill down into Quebec very quickly because I read that you've had conversations or you've reached out to Premier Legault. A lot of their regulations are unique to their province, and that is seen by Quebecers as an asset, right, as integral to their identity. How willing is he, in your view, based on your conversations, to break down the barriers that you're mentioning?
Well, that's a great question. It's early days, and Premier Legault has indicated a willingness to have the conversation and to look at making some changes. You're right that Quebec has a very different labor environment there, and so we find it tough to be able to get work done in that environment. And they have some rules in place that reflect their unique interests. But I think Legault is certainly willing to move, and so we're going to see how far we can go with him and how quickly.
Okay, Premier, I'll leave it there. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Vashi.